Well, hey there, everybody. Welcome to Beginner Music Theory video number 7. Today, we're actually going to jump into musical notation to a degree, what to expect when you look at a staff, like what each line actually is. What are you looking at? What does that mean? Also, we're going to start into some meters, some time signatures, talk about quarter notes, half notes, eighth notes, what those things are, how to count them. So we're going to dive into that, like the real, like if you're going to read some music, that kind of stuff. So here's my handy dandy chart that I drew up. Let's just focus on the top staff for now. First of all, that's called a staff. May not have known that. Now you know that. This is called the treble clef. That clef, that weird, funny, curly Q shape, treble clef. This weird C shape with the two dots next to him, that's a bass clef, okay? So when you see a piece of music written in treble clef, that first line at the bottom is an E. And then from there, it's E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. First line above the staff is an A. So above the staff, you've got your first space is a G, and then the first line is an A. That just allows you to go above the register and keep going, especially on like a piano, you know, something that's really gonna got some range on it. Guitar kind of gets a little crazy on the range versus one staff too, because guitar is written single staff, unlike piano, which is, you know, double staff. You'll have a treble clef staff above your bass clef staff for piano music. Guitar music's not written that way. We'll get into that some other time. Anyhow, so it's just like the alphabet always. Only E is your bottom line. So below E, if you got spaces and lines below E, you can see here you got a D and then a C. That C there is what's called middle C. That middle C is the C in the middle of a piano. Sonically, that's the note you would hear, okay? Which, my little piano here, I believe middle C would be there-ish. That guy? Yeah. Now, bass clef. Same deal, only middle C is actually a line above the staff. So then you would go down from there. But your first line in the bass clef is a G, followed by first space is an A, first line is a B, so on and so forth. So it's always line, space, and then eventually you'll memorize what each of these is, and then you don't even have to think about it anymore. Worth noting, middle C is one line above this staff in bass clef. Middle C is one line below the staff, treble clef. That means that if you were to keep going up in bass clef, eventually from that C, you're actually here and keep going up, okay? They run into each other in that way. And those are the notes. Now, real quick for fun, we're going to cover an accidental, or not an accidental, key signature, sorry. Same idea, but not the same idea. Now, on this channel, we're always talking about G major. So in G major, you would see this F sharp pop up. So you would see, that's called a sharp sign. The hashtag over the line is called a sharp. Notice that in treble clef, that sharp happens over the line that corresponds with F. And in the bass clef, it happens over the line that corresponds with F. Same deal. Okay? Now, let's get into time signatures, meter. We'll talk about that a little bit. First, we're going to start with simple meters. Simple meter simply means that each beat is divided into 2. Now, there are things you can do later on that will poke holes in this a little bit, but for the most part, divide in 2. So, take what we've got written down here is 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, 3/2. What does that mean? Well, the bottom number, that 4, means that everything is divided in quarter notes. 4/4. Now over here, we got 3/2. That means that each beat is a half note. So your metronome, when your metronome's clicking away, you know, In 3/2, each would be a half note. In 4/4, each would be a quarter note, okay? Now, what's it mean by simple meter can be divided in two? Well, we'll go over here, 2/4. You got 1, 2, 1, 2, 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1 en to 2 en, 1 en to 2 en. So I went from quarter notes 1, 2 to eighth notes 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 en to 16th notes 1 en to 2 en, 1 en to 2 en. So you see how it's all divisible by 2, groups of 2. Same with, 3/4. You're just gonna have 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 en to 2 en to 3 en to 1 en to 2 en to 3 en. Okay, you get the idea. But the notation here would go from quarters to eighths to sixteenths. We'll clarify if you don't know what those notes look like. We'll get to that probably in the next video. Just want to introduce you to some of this. I'm assuming that you're brand new, never seen any of this, and you're just learning it. So we're small steps. Now over here, the 3/2 is a little different. So what I want you to remember, if you ever run across a piece of music that's something over 2, is this guy, this half note. Notice the half note, this head of the note, you can see through it. It's just an oval open in the middle, but the quarter is blacked out. Okay, it's important to know. Quarters are blacked out with a straight stem. Halves are hollow with a straight stem. Okay, now when you're counting it though, these half notes would equal a quarter note as far as how you would count it. It's notated as a half note, but you would still count this as 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now let's say instead of 3 half notes, you saw 6 quarter notes, but the time signature is 3/2. The 6 quarter notes in this instance, you would count as 1 and 2 and 3 and 1 and 2 and 3 and. Because a quarter note is twice as fast as a half note. So that's simple meter introduction to quarter notes, eighth notes, half notes, stuff like that. We'll delve into that a little more in the future so it makes a little more sense in case it's still murky. Now, this bottom line is what's called compound meter, and I noticed that I wiped a bunch of that off because I'm a dummy. Okay, now in compound meter, the big difference here, compound versus simple. Compound, each beat, each of the metronome is now going to be divisible by 3 instead of 2, okay? So in this instance, when you go from, say, quarters to sixteenths, instead of going from 1 to 1, 2, you would go from to 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and. Instead of that, you would go from 1 to 1 to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, it's divided into groups of 3 instead. So let's take a look. So we have 6, 4 over here. This is kind of an odd one that I'm throwing at you just because it'll help you get accustomed to this kind of note, that's a half note, which is exactly what you saw over here. However, it's got a dot next to it. Now you may be wondering, it's 6/4. Why are there half notes to begin with? Should be quarter notes, right? You're absolutely right. 6/4 should be 6 quarter notes, which you would count as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? You're absolutely right. But in this case, we're dividing the measure into 2 dotted half notes. Mostly because I want you to see a dotted half note and what that means. The dot means that you add an extra half of the original length. So a half note is 2 quarter notes long. Add a half, which is another quarter note. Now it's 3 quarter notes long. That dot means that half note is 3 quarter notes long versus this one, which was 2 quarter notes long. So then, if that's 3 quarter notes long, you actually do have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, very important to know that. Now over here, we've got 6/8. which you would count these eighth notes the same way. Now notice this. We talked about how a quarter note's written, how a half note's written. Eighth notes are written like this. They have a solid head and a stem, and they have a bar connecting them to another one, or there's another way you can write them. We'll get to that in the future. But right now, these are eighth notes and how you would write them in this context of 6/8. And you would count this as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? Back here, we would count it as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay? Now, this is another measure. I want to throw another dot at you. That's a dotted quarter note, which means it's a quarter note and a half of a quarter note. Well, we know that 2 eighth notes makes a quarter note. So if you add another eighth note, you got 3 eighth notes in that space, and then 3 eighth notes right there, which equals 6 eighth notes. Okay? So you would do this as, now this would have to be by feel. If you were playing an instrument, you wouldn't articulate this, but you'd articulate the 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. 1, 4, 5, 6. So when you're counting things like that, you have to have an internal meter telling you the 1, 4, 5, 6. Okay? It's getting a little crazy on you. But there's all of that. That's a pretty solid introduction. There's a lot of information there, really, especially if you've never seen any of this. So I just wanted to get you guys rolling on that, know what notes are on the staff and all that, get a feel for different meters, how to count them, stuff like that. We'll cover all the notes and their values probably in the next video to get a better explanation of, because there's other stuff. There's whole notes, dotted whole notes, and 16th notes, 32nd notes, and there's more to come. So we'll get into that, I think, in the next video. Thank you for watching. You're going to do awesome. Have a wonderful day.